Welcome into episode 97 of The Checklist, brought to you by SecureMac. I'm Ken Ray.
I'm Nicholas Raba.
And I'm Nicholas Tachek.
Buying and selling security exploits with been caught stealing playing in the background, plus the line between courtesy and creepy can be very fine. We'll look at privacy and you at 30,000 feet on today's edition of The Checklist by SecureMac. Here's a surprising story. A guy who works for a company that hacks iPhones tried to sell those tools for, wait for it, money. According to a piece from Cult of Mac, an employee of Israel-based NSO Group disabled the security software on his computer, then copied the source code for NSO Group's phone hacking tools onto an external drive. He then went to the dark web, said he was a hacker who had broken into NSO servers, and offered his ill-gotten gain for as much as $50 million. However, says the piece, one of the people he contacted reported him to the Israeli Justice Ministry, so that went well. An NSO spokesperson says within a very short time, the former employee was arrested and the stolen property was secured. NSO says no intellectual property or company materials have been shared with any third party or otherwise leaked, and no customer data or information was compromised. I have questions about that, but we will get to those. First, the second story, this one from Bleeping Computer, and no, that's not me censoring myself. The site is called Bleeping Computer. They say that the exploit broker Zerodium is offering rewards of up to $500,000 for 0 days in Unix-based operating systems like OpenBSD, FreeBSD, NetBSD, as well as for a few flavors of Linux. Zerodium is known for buying 0 days and selling them to government agencies and law enforcement, according to the piece. Zerodium payouts for exploits usually net between $10,000 and $30,000, though this time around the piece says rewards can go as high as $500,000 for the right exploit. What makes an exploit the right exploit? According to the Bleeping piece, the acquisition price of a submitted 0 day is directly tied to its requirements in terms of user interaction, no click, 1 click, 2 clicks, etc. Other factors include the exploit reliability, its success rate, the number of vulnerabilities chained together for the final exploit to work, and the OS configuration needed for the exploit to work. Zerodium's founder explains even more, saying price difference between systems is mostly driven by market forces. For desktop environments, as Windows leads the market, exploits for Windows are usually more valuable than Linux, he says. However, for server environments, Linux attracts more interest from customers and the rewards can reach exceptional amounts. Obviously, he goes on to say, mobile exploits remain the most expensive and most valuable assets in our industry due to their market penetration and usefulness from an operational perspective. Now, I ran those two stories together because philosophically they feel similar to me. I guess there are a few things I want to hit, and I have them laid out here, but there was one that just occurred to me, so I want to go there first. Unix is mostly server-based, right? It runs, or Linux and Unix, I think, are mostly server-based. One of those, I want to say it's Unix, is generally speaking tied to things like payment systems, right? Am I mistaken about that? Or, like, why do they want Unix? Why do they want Linux?
Anything that's a kind of major server-type system, there is Windows Server stuff. There's a lot of that out there, but some of the really high-powered stuff that runs things like you were saying, like point-of-sale systems, stuff like that, is Linux or Unix-based for a variety of reasons, some of which are that you can kind of create not really, a scaled-down version of the operating system. They can run kind of on lean-to-machine hardware, which is what you're going to see in systems like industrial systems or point-of-sale systems, where you don't necessarily have super high-end graphics that you need to be supporting. So you're going to go for something lean and mean, and Unix and Linux fit the bill perfectly there. So that is kind of why you're going to see that more in those types of environments versus more user-friendly, full user interface operating systems like Mac OS or Windows.
So I guess what I'm trying to figure out then is, why is Zerodium interested in them? I mean, are bad guys running those kind of server environments? Is Zerodium selling to some governments to fight other governments? Is this an attempt to go after the private sector? I'm curious why it is they want these exploits, or do they want them just to have them because you never know?
Well, and think of them as the middleman. They're selling something to somebody who wants it.
Right.
So who's buying it? There could be government agencies buying it. There could be private industries buying them. Let's think about all the discussion that we've had about the iPhones and the cat and mouse games about unlocking them and things like that. Different groups, different organizations are going to want to have these tools within their reach to be able to accomplish whatever they're trying to accomplish right there. So,
and it's a thing of scale too. I mean, if you can own the back end server that's running something huge and has lots of other devices connecting into it, it's easier to kind of own the system at that one point than try and get the individual devices. So, whether or not it's a cyber warfare type thing where you have a government agency that wants an exploit that can be used against, some other country's telecom system or something, for example. Or if you're talking about law enforcement, yes, the bad guys do run servers. When you think about stuff like botnets, the centralized server that those bots are calling into is running some sort of server type software. So it could be helpful from that perspective. Probably a little less of an impact than something like weaponized exploits for cyber warfare, but still definitely based on the targets, you if you can exploit the server, you get a lot of information that way. You can take control of a lot of things that way versus one device at a time.
Let's go back to the NSO story for a minute. So this guy, well, not really the NSO. I mean, this is why they both sort of blend together. I'm wondering, like, the guy from the NSO story tried to go out and sell this stuff for himself, and that didn't go well. Zerodium comes along and says, hey, we'll give you between $10,000 and $500,000. Why wouldn't I go out and sell it myself? Is it because I might end up like that poor sad so-and-so from NSO Group? Or is it because, calling the FBI and saying, hey, I have an exploit is a great way to end up on the bad side of good guys? I mean, why wouldn't I just go out and try to sell it myself?
Well, for a couple of reasons. I mean, in that NSO case, it was the guy stole the technology or sold the exploit. So that's kind of a little different than if you were a security researcher who developed a new one on your own, not in terms of brokering stolen data. But there's a few reasons. I mean, if you had a really expensive watch, would you be comfortable going to meet some random person in a dark alley to sell it? Or would you rather take it to, a pawn shop or some other reputable place of business that isn't necessarily going to hit you in the head with a hammer? I mean, seriously, that's the reason these brokers exist, because they're known in the community as a safe place to sell an exploit to. You'll get paid. You're not going to get ripped off. You do have to follow some rules as a seller that you're not going to turn around and resell that exploit to someone else. You have to provide all your research, all your notes. And that way the company that's buying the exploit can kind of guarantee that it's theirs now and they can do what they will with it. And I believe that those brokers are kind of the way to go. Like, I don't really know that you could call up the FBI and say, hey, I've got a data exploit I want to sell. I don't think it works that way. I mean, maybe if you have the right contact, but normally going through one of
But the FBI may buy it from you via this service anonymously, of course.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's mainly the reason you'd go with one of these established places is just for the sake of safety. You're going to get paid. You're not going to, lose your money. You're not going to get in legal trouble. So that's kind of why most places would sell it, like, most legitimate security researchers would sell on the open market like that. If you're selling a stolen exploit, then yeah, going to the dark web is what that guy did, and obviously didn't end very well for him.
Yeah, he did he bump into somebody from sorry, I can't remember which episode it was, but it wasn't that long ago that we were talking about either the fact or the belief that banks and financial institutions trawl the dark web looking to buy information that hackers have stolen from those banks and financial institutions. This guy bumped into somebody in law enforcement on the dark web, right? I mean, we don't know that for certain, but Come on.
That or there are companies that will monitor. Like you can basically hire some companies that will monitor for your assets. It's almost like those credit card alerts. Like, hey, somebody tried to do something fraudulent with your card. So, but it's like that for companies, and it's almost a form of insurance these days. So it was probably something like that. Could have been law enforcement. Could have been that the NSO group had people watching out for them on the dark web. But it's pretty common for hackers to kind of, hackers or data brokers like that, the kind of shadier side of things. They rip each other off all the time. They sell stolen exploits. They resell them. They don't pay each other. They, run away with the Bitcoin. It's not, is by no means a guaranteed, successful sale. And so that's kind of what that guy found out. But yeah, so, we don't really know who he bumped into, but whoever he did thought it was going to be more worthwhile for them to contact the actual vendor in question than to try and pay $50 million for what might have been, not even a real exploit. Could have been fake. That happens all the time too.
It's been a while since we talked about this, and in a way it feels like a silly question. I mean, to ask how you feel about something that exists. I mean, why don't I ask you how you feel about the fact that there's rain? But this is different because there are actually people involved. Celebrite, NSO Group, Zerodium. How do you guys feel about companies like this being out there? I mean, again, with the understanding that it doesn't matter how I feel about it, it is. But I don't know. How do you guys feel about about brokers and, people who theoretically are selling to the good guys, doing their work?
Well, everybody wants to make a piece of something. I mean, these different companies, these different tools, they create solutions that are used, generally for good by people, right? I mean, that's what we hope for here. The
thing is, I mean, they're going to exist one way or another. So, yeah, we could argue their merits, especially based on ones that are selling to countries with oppressive regimes or human rights violation history. But the other side of that coin is that companies that do have, companies should have bug bounty programs in the first place. These software vendors should have a bug bounty program, and they should also be offering competitive rates for those exploits. When you have a company like Apple, for example, offering fairly lowball rates for exploits compared to something like Zerodium, everybody's going to sell to Zerodium or sell on dark web or sell their exploits to anybody other than Apple, unless Apple was more competitive with the pricing. And so in that case, it's the exploits are going to get sold one way or another. So I would personally like to see a lot of these companies step up their bug bounty program efforts.
But is it cheaper not to step them up? Like, is it cheaper for these bugs to exist, to be sold to somebody else? They make the news or they make the tool sets that Apple or any of these other companies are watching. Then they reverse engineer and they go, oh, that's how they did it. And then they fix the issue with it without paying somebody $500,000.
If we're just going to go, if we're straight talking about, something like Zerodium, a public, not dark web exploit trading or exploit broker, I would rather have that they exist. Like, I'd rather be in a world where they exist and we know they're there and we know their prices and all that stuff than not have anything at all where the only place to get it is on the dark web and it's all shady and nobody knows who's selling to who. And I would rather have some sort of company that's somewhat on the level than not.
And how long until government starts saying, okay, before you do any of these transactions, we need to know about all these, trying to regulate this industry?
That's happened. There've been a lot of crazy laws that have passed in various countries regarding security exploits, and that's probably enough material to talk about all on its own for its own show. But it's security researchers are always kind of they're hesitant because in some countries an exploit code that's totally legal somewhere else is like you can't even have that code on. You could get in trouble for it. So that does raise some issues with the various cybersecurity laws around the world and what's legal in one place isn't in another. And it's kind of just how the internet is separate to an extent, but still impacted by various laws.
It's like It's like a web that's worldwide or something.
All connected. Crazy.
It's a fine line between courteous and creepy, and United Airlines is feeling it out. Fortune outlines a recent appearance by Linda Jojo, Executive VP of Technology and Chief Digital Officer at United. The airline is working on an app designed to personalize customer experiences, again, without freaking people out. Fortune has Jojo saying, "We're actually trying to arm our employees with information about who is seated in 7C so that our flight attendants can have a better way of interacting with them. But the reality is that the line between personalized and creepy is different for different people. Do you like it when we come up and wish you a happy birthday? We're trying to figure out where does that line fall." Fortune goes on to say a recent survey revealed that 75% of consumers find personalized brand experiences at least somewhat creepy, but nearly half said they don't do anything about it. Let me stop me right there. What could we do or say? Like if somebody says, "Hey, did you have a good birthday?" Are you going to be like, what would you say at that point? Especially if you're 30,000 feet. Like, I want to speak to your manager. Fine, I want to speak to the co-pilot then. Who are you going to talk to?
I don't know. I guess it would depend. Like, are they greeting me with a cocktail, like, as I'm being seated with, like, little balloons and stuff? Then the experience is right there versus, Hey, how was your birthday?
Yeah.
Oh, I think that's more of a, you do the passive-aggressive tweeting for the rest of the flight.
Well, I mean, so have you been asked a question that was totally creepy like that, and did you say anything? I mean, are you part of the 75% that's like, that's bothering me, and then, the majority who says, but what are you going to do?
Not on an airline, like, firsthand experience like that, but I have checked into a hotel, and as I'm walking up, they greet me by my name, and I have no clue who this person is.
Do you know how
It's a little creepy right there.
Do you know how that happened? Is it something, is it like an app on your phone? Is it a beacon thing? Is it a loyalty program? What is it?
Because I am they researched their guests, and they want to know who is staying with them and how they could better make their experience. So they had a profile on me, and they knew some of the things I liked, and yeah, they probably did Facebook stalking, but for the concierge team, it was them trying to make my experience better, I guess.
See, if I were staying in a 5-star hotel or something like that, there's something that makes you think, are there 5-star hotels or is it 4? I don't know. You see that?
Oh, no, it even goes up from there.
Does it really? All right, let's say I'm staying in a 9-star hotel. I want to sort of have that level of service at that point. There'd be something that would feel great about that. What's weird is as this trickles down, like if I'm driving across the country and I stop at a Motel 6, which I don't think I would do, but if I'm driving across the country and I stop at a Motel 6, and, they sort of halfway welcome me. And while they're giving me a Danish wrapped in plastic, they're calling me by my name and asking me how my trip was from point A to point B. I mean, I can sort of fool myself into thinking, wow, I'm really something if this 9-star hotel knows who I am. Whereas if I, go to a microtel, and no offense to any of these I shouldn't say lesser if I'm going to say no offense. No offense to any of the brands that I'm mentioning. It's just, there's something weird about the prevalence of information, especially as it starts to reveal itself more.
And especially if it's not information that I'm specifically providing that company, then it feels like they're stalking, which is really, really creepy. I mean, it's one thing if they have me fill out, say, a questionnaire or some sort of get to know you thing when I sign up for their rewards club. Like that's something that I'm fine with that. They can send me the birthday card in the mail. They can send me the email saying, "Hey, come stay with us, get a, free cocktail."
So what's different than them as you take your seat on the plane saying happy birthday to you?
Happy birthday. Maybe that's not okay. Well, it's a little weird for me. I'm fine. I guess I'm okay with the impersonal if they're sending me the email or the postcard in the mail. It's when you have the random worker who I definitely don't know prior to this interaction saying something like that. So it's
how about if you had status and you always flew on this airline and you get upgraded and now they better know you type deal. Then it makes it,
and that's different.
Then it makes it okay, right?
Because then it feels like a personalization done as a perk of you being at whatever status level versus, as Ken was saying, I go to some random hotel or motel on my, drive across the country. And it's just, you know what I mean? It's creepy if they're just like, oh, hey, we know all this stuff about you and we're just, and it's, the other thing is when you're talking about, kind of brand loyalty and stuff like that, there is a line, I think, between the really high-end stuff and the not really high-end stuff pretending to be the high-end stuff. It just feels forced, and that makes it even creepier.
See, to me, this almost goes back to the Zerodium question we were talking about a moment ago, though, or a few minutes ago, when you said you just, you like the fact that they're out there. It may not affect you, but you like knowing that they're out there, knowing that they're on the up and up. I mean, the drive across the country is not a terribly theoretical thing for me. I recently took a drive across the country, and driving across, I hadn't called any of my financial institutions to let them know, and one of my cards got flagged, and I couldn't use it. And so I called to fix that issue, and the guy asked me questions, the answers to which I had never given to that card issuer, but they're out there, probably Experian, Equifax, TransUnion, something like that, right?
Yeah, we all got that info on you.
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, here's the thing, though. It's like, I mean, so is it better if the person at United says happy birthday? Because at least it's a nice reminder that there's more information out there about you. You don't even remember a lot of the information out there about you, which is really true. I mean, when they asked me, so they were like, okay, so which of these streets didn't you live on? Well, I was a vagabond in my 20s. So, I mean, it would almost be a shorter list to say, streets I didn't live on at one point. So, I mean, is it better to have somebody say, hey, hope the colonoscopy went well because the information's out there on some level?
The birthday thing, I think I'd be much more okay with. In the Fortune article, the example given was that somebody was asking how their daughter's graduation went. That crosses a line. I mean, that's creepy. That's like, you might have put the pictures up on Facebook to share with your friends or whatever, but when you have some random company going to that level, you're not something that's very simple, hometown, date of birth, that kind of stuff. Like, it's one thing to be like, oh, hey, did you catch the football game for whatever your home team is, or happy birthday? That's one thing that information is at least based on what they can pretty much see on your ticket or your ticketing information if it's an airline situation. When you're talking about other stuff, other levels, how is that, graduation? How is, whatever have you, how is something else? It's just, it's almost like there's different levels of creepiness based on what type of information is being discussed.
Well, in fairness, I mean, really quickly, because there were two stories that we all read. The Fortune piece didn't say anything about how was your daughter's birthday. There was another piece that we read that sort of led me back to this Fortune piece. That person who wrote that first story seemed to kind of be making up the how was your daughter's birthday thing. They were extrapolating a bit. I mean, United is conscious of the fact that they might creep people out. So I think, and this is not to say that this wouldn't change in a year or 5 years. This is not to say that it wouldn't go deeper at some point. But Ms. Jojo is very conscious of the fact that you probably want to go like, it would be stuff about you, Nicholas, not stuff about you, Nicholas, and your daughter and your daughter's teacher. Okay,
I must have misread that when I was just looking back on that. That's when you're talking about. Okay, that's correct.
You're not wrong, though. I mean, that's.
Well, I'm glad they're acknowledging that that's a step too far.
Right. Well, but they're not acknowledging that it's a step too far. It's somebody else said, oh, well, let's draw this out. And in fairness, that's half of what we do on this show as well. I just want to make it clear. United is not saying, yeah, we're going to go 3 deep in your contacts. I mean, they probably are going 3 deep in your contacts, but they're not saying they're going to.
Well, the other side of it is think about all the different ride sharing apps, how you get to rate your driver. Mm-hmm. Well, many of those apps, the drivers get to rate you.
Right. And
you have your own portfolio, your own profile. Chances are you can't see all the data, but all this data is, being put together on you. So now, with the same system in mind, are the airlines going to start building, or have they built? Do they have these portfolios on you outside of your regular travel habits? Now somebody has the flight attendant could be like, oh, this guy here, allergic to cats or allergic to peanuts or troublemaker or uses the bathroom when the use your seatbelt light is on. And, starts building up all these habits and things like that.
Yeah, hopefully they come with a spoonful of sugar rather than just, hitting people. Although, what would be great is you get on a plane, and it's a plane that doesn't even serve food, and you, for some reason, get a cookie. It's just they like you. Your profile is shiny and clean. The stories that we did earlier in the show, not as exhaustive as they might have been. There was a lot more information on each and every one of these stories. And they're on that World Wide Web that we're hearing so much about. So probably there are links in those stories that would lead you to even other stories. It's a great big rabbit hole down which you can fall. And it all starts at our website, SecureMac.com/checklist. Go there, actually, and you'll find notes for today's show. You'll find notes for every show we've done before and every show that we do after this one. SecureMac.com/checklist. If you have a question you'd like to ask or a topic you'd like to hear us hit, our email address is checklist@securemac.com. The address again is checklist@securemac.com. And if you can't remember that, please do remember this. You're listening to The Checklist, brought to you by SecureMac. And we'll talk to you next week.